On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
What is your goal here? Because these are your kids. And he's a man who's raising his own children and has a wife that he has to take care of. Despite the example that you've shown him, he has, despite that, married a woman, stayed with her, maintained his household, and he's there trying to heal his relationship with his mother, and she's still talking about her disappointment against him.
All right, welcome to Lapeef, Let's Talk. I'm here with the crew, as usual. Tawana,
Hey, y'all.
Anton, B. Nix,
And I'm here.
and myself, J.I. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. How much damage is happening as a result of our mother's tongue? How much damage is happening as a result of our mother's tongue? It was a video that I ran across, which was quite interesting. When I first saw the video, it made me think about like the relationship that I have with my oldest son, and then I started thinking about parents as a whole, as far as the things that we say to our kids and how it affects them in the long run. I'm going to play this little skit and then we're going to dive right into this topic. Okay. As far as that video, I want to just say we're not going to say that the fathers don't have an impact and that the fathers' words don't impact what's going on with their sons, but we want to focus directly on the mothers because I don't think that we talk enough about that, especially we have a lot of single mothers that's out there and even mothers that's in marriages or relationships. I think that relationship is very important and she has a huge impact on their sons' lives. And based off the video that you guys just saw, I just wanted to get you guys' first thoughts. I'm going to start with you, B. Next. When you first saw that video, what did you think about that?
I thought about myself and, when we kind of like are given this content to think about on how we want to respond to something like through the video you show, I always think about what if I'm him, right? So, I don't know. I had a lot of mixed thoughts. I mean, the first thing is I almost want to say like, you suck it up, and I'm not trying to sound like ignorant about it or just like detached from the way it's being presented. But I want to say that communication is powerful. And the thing is, I think that we don't know how powerful our words are, as far as being a parent, being friends, people you need to know, coworkers. I think we don't realize how powerful our voices are. So, I mean, I think that it's hard for me to say there's anything wrong with the way our parents communicate with us, but I would like to know more as to the why. Like, I think that was one thing that, not just my mom's, but really I always talk about my grandma a lot on the show. She's not with us anymore, but she was tough. But she always explained to me why she was telling me to do something. And it wasn't really like a rah, 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 like screaming, yelling, but it was very stern. So the thing is, that was the part where it kind of goes back to like sucking it up, where it's like I learned the person I am now, I actually learned from my grandma. Not from my mom, not necessarily from my dad, but from my grandmother. She was a very tough woman. I never saw her cry, but she meant business. I knew not to cross her. And if I crossed her, I would feel the wrath. So I think going back to what we saw today, it shows that, being a mother, I think even as a parent, we don't realize how powerful our words are that can negatively damage our sons, our future. But I would say for anyone, this is not saying that you got to be best friends, but I think that we need to make sure that we provide the context of why we do what we do as parents. And that's something that I'm unsure, not for that show, that clip that we saw, but over the course of years. Because basically, going back to the psych aspect, this is classic conditioning. This is the stimuli, her yelling, and the response is his behavior. After you classically condition someone in this environment over the course of years, this is the outcome of it. And some people, like we talked about on previous shows, everybody is not built the same way. Everybody's not going to respond the way that she feels that he should respond to her yelling, her verbal abuse. People have feelings. We're all human beings. And just like for those that may have multiple children, we all know for a fact we can't use a cookie cutter approach with each child. Each child, we have to really tailor our communication on how we really break through to the youth. So, I mean, for me, I was mixed where I tried to look at it that, you know, as a child, you just deal with it. But this showed an example of what goes wrong. And we grow up with this as adults where we just hold all this emotion, this negativity, this resentment, this guilt, this madness, this illness of us being socially, emotionally intelligent. This is where it comes from in the household. So I think that the show actually highlighted that, that we need to consider how powerful our voices are and really give context as to why we sing and doing what we do for a particular reason. I hope for that mother that they are able to turn the corner together, because I think that right now, when you get a child, when they're at a certain age where they're like teenager about to be an adult, that's almost it. I really truly feel that the parenting ends right now. Once you become 18, it's more so I'm trying to ensure that I've implanted all the seeds you needed in order to be the best informed adult as possible.
Yeah, that's crazy you say that. I just had a conversation about my son. He's 15. He'll be 16 in April. And I was sitting here like, I only got a couple more years, but deep down, I know that he is who he is already. But I still think that there's a chance that you can make some type of impact if you put the work in. Tawana, coming to you. When you first saw that video, what were your thoughts?
Well, I saw the entire episode, so I kind of understood the pattern and everything that the family was going through. So I could not connect with that mother. I don't understand why she talked to her son that way. I don't understand why she lost respect for her son. And just to add context, her daughter was in an abusive relationship, and the son maintained a relationship with the man who was abusing his sister, basically, because the sister stayed with him. So the mother in that clip, she was basically saying, I don't respect him as a man, because what man would befriend someone that hurts the sister, right? So that was her position. And I think from the brother's from the son's perspective, he was just saying, I'm just trying to be there for my sister. Like I'm just trying to maintain a relationship with my sister. She's still going to be with this man. And this is the way, she has a child with this man. This is the way to maintain this relationship with my sister and just stay present in her life. Of course, I'm not okay with him beating her, but this is what it is. And the mother, she couldn't move past that. She didn't respect him for that. So that's what she was saying, and that's the context of it. But there was other things that happened. And, just me, I can only connect with me being a mother to a son and just how I speak to him as the person who I want him to become. So I don't speak to him like degrading him or talking down to him. I speak to him in the future into him. I want him to become a great person. So I speak to him as if he's already there. And that's what he is. So I just don't ever want to get to a place where I'm losing respect for my son or talking to my son in that way. And I do think that Ayana hit some key points, and some points that we didn't really, see, but she hit some key points in just saying that, we don't learn good patterns of parenting in our communities overall. And, there is a pattern there, things that she's experienced in her life that she's passing down to her children and that they've passed down. It was patterns repeated throughout that whole entire episode. And people don't really pay attention to that. If you don't know conflict resolution skills, you have to learn how to really do that. If you don't know how to parenting, you have to learn, you have to study, you have to read books, and you have to see what other people do in order to really learn how to parent. It's not just something natural to everybody. So I think sometimes, we just learn what we learn from our examples, and that's what we pass down. And she just had a lot of trauma in her past that she just passed down, and was a lot of secrets. So, my initial reaction was shock. Like, I was really shocked at some of the things that she said to her son and some of the things that she's done to her children, not just her son, but her children overall. She treated all her children like that. And I can't connect with that as a mother, because I would never do that to my kids. So, that was my initial reaction to that.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate what happened, but I do appreciate seeing videos like this because I always feel as though since we're parents now, we're able to kind of curve that. We're able to make that change so that that pattern doesn't continue. Anton, when you first saw that video, tell me your thoughts.
It didn't make me feel any type of way, to be honest with you. Like I wasn't in the space to where I felt like she was wrong. I don't necessarily have any I don't know what the foundation of the video came from. It's hard to pull anything out of just having a clip specifically, but I don't necessarily think it was right or wrong simply because I just didn't have context. I do know that I I heap a lot of responsibility, not necessarily on the mothers, but on the fathers, because I feel like absentee fathers force mothers into a position to where they have to play both roles. They have to try to figure out, and I don't get me wrong, I do think that there is a huge role that mothers play in not allowing fathers to be associated or to parent properly, especially when they're not together. I think that a lot of times, in a lot of situations, from a lot of friends that I know, they've used kids as weapons against the fathers. But specifically, as it relates to the overall picture, if I had to draw a narrative, I would say that fathers hold a larger responsibility for the roles that mothers have to play in the lives of their sons than we want to acknowledge in this specific situation. So again, I don't necessarily have context of this specific video, but I do think that in my opinion, I'm asking, where is the father? Why is he not a part of the clip? Why is he not a part of the episode? What role did he play in the growth and you know of what his son was to become, and why isn't he, what I'm saying, taking a level of responsibility that allows her to play more of a nurturing role, more of a the role that's suited to her characteristic as a woman, whereas he could play more of a man role because it takes men to raise men. So, I'm asking that question rather than heaping responsibility of why she did or did not say what she said. Because again, if the context is true that he was friends, if I had a son and he was friends of a dude that was abusing my daughter, I wouldn't have respect for him either. So, I mean, that's my narrative based off the limited amount of information that I have on the clip.
No, I think you bring up a good point, Anton, and I was thinking about it from the same lens you were saying. Well, from the aspect where you talk about where is the father, but I even took it like a step further in my processing, even while you were talking, like where is the village, and that's something that I think that's something that really kind of hits home when we talk about the Black family and the aspect of the extended family, or like you have your primary, then your secondary family, where they're able to wrap their arms around you. The aunts, the uncles, the neighbor that's almost like a family member, the cousin that's really not the cousin but the fake cousin. All of those people. So I almost feel like it makes me feel like I'm old school or something, because it's like I don't know if that's something that is necessarily a thing in the Black community anymore, where you have these collection of family members and friends that you consider family that really wrap their arms around you in order to do a fill gap. And I'm not saying that I can necessarily relate to that particular situation, but again, trying to put myself in that situation, it makes me think about, I always talk about my grandma a lot, or my grandfather. Like, they were the fill gaps. If you notice, I usually, when I talk about my moms or my pops, it's maybe not always from the greatest space, at least from the aspect of my vantage point as a child. As an adult, it's different, but it's one of those that my grandparents on both sides of the family, they were the fill gaps. And they may not have saw eye to eye, but the thing is, the common goal is, like you mentioned, Tawana, that we're speaking to our children in order to make them the best version of themselves, that we're trying to sow the seeds now. So when they grow, when they reach 18, cool. Not to say we could sit back and kick our legs up and like, hey, you making money, hey, reimburse me for all that time and effort I put into. But really, it's more so about just, enjoying the fruits of the labor. So, and I think that's something that we don't see. It's like there's a lot of people out here that's hurt, and they have children without someone to fill the gaps. And like you mentioned, Tawana, this parent, I was about to say this young lady, but she is a young lady, but this young lady really has some social emotional things that she needs to process herself. But unfortunately, she can't necessarily have the space to do that because she's a parent. So the thing is, your child takes priority. So her internal issues really are not fully being addressed. And if anything, it's being projected onto her son as a defense mechanism, you know, and she's leveraging that seniority, for lack of better words, as parents, that, hey, you got to honor what I say because I'm your blood. I brought you into this world. I feel like sometimes parents use this as like this leverage as if they're, you know, our children are slaves, and they're not, you know?
Yeah. I mean, she cut off most of her children. If they don't, you know, she doesn't like what they say, she'd disconnect and stop the relationship. But he was an adult. He was 30 years old. He had a wife and he had 3 children. And so she, you know, she was basically condemning him for, you know, maintaining that relationship. But also Ayana brought up a good point. It's like, well, did you have any examples in his life to teach him how to be a man? So if you didn't, how can you hold him accountable for something you never gave him the tools to do? And so he's going out here doing the best he can in life. And so now you're criticizing him for tools that you didn't give him. And then the mother herself had been in a history of abusive relationships. And so the last 17 years, she was with a man who was physically abusing her. The son stepped in to help, and she turned on the son and kicked him out. And so she didn't have a relationship with her son. So they had a history of issues, right? So it wasn't just about that one comment about not respecting, because if a parent is telling you they're disappointed in you, but they've been your ride or die by your side, teaching you, you're not going to have an issue with that. But if you have a parent who's been in and out of your life, constantly disappointing you, showing you that you're not a priority in their life, and then you try to criticize or come and give me this unsolicited advice, it almost is abusive. It's almost the opposite of whatever you're trying to accomplish. And what is your goal here? Because these are your kids. And he's a man who's raising his own children and has a wife that he has to take care of. Despite the example that you've shown him, he has, despite that, married a woman, stayed with her, maintained his household, and he's there trying to heal his relationship with his mother, and she's still talking about her disappointment against him. So that's the problem that I have with that whole entire scenario.
No, you're right. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. It really is. And I gotta, because the thing is, even from the clip we seen, it's like, hey, he was still, he gave her the space, right? And he just received it. But the thing is, he almost looks like, and not to say he's defeated, but it's like, man, this seems like you could see the weight that the climate, the atmosphere of not just that conversation, but I'm sure many culminating conversations that led up to that moment. You could see that it weighs on him, And that's the part,
ultimately, he had to decide. Ultimately, he had to decide not to have a relationship with his mother. And that's got to be the most painful thing, because I think he was desperately there hoping that they could move past that, and that they could change that dynamic and relationship. And they were never able to move past it, or never able to get over it. And that was the most disappointing thing to me, to see that. And a mother's words and how she speaks to her children, because the mother, we guard the children. Yes, the man helps us raise, but the women, we are in charge of the children. That is a lot of our roles, right? And so for you to be the primary person in charge of your children, and you don't know how to speak light into them, you don't know how to motivate them, you don't know how to, encourage or even explain to them why you're disappointed in their behavior without degrading or criticizing or putting down, then there's a lot to be learned about parenting, because there's so many other words you can use to express your disappointment in some behavior. But beyond what she said to her own son, beyond what she said to her flesh and blood. So,
you know what? I see that you guys painted a clear picture and kind of broke down the video. I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Tawana, for actually watching the whole video and providing the information for us. But What would you say to the people out there that don't have anybody, like the father's nowhere to be found? And in that situation, you have a mother that's just being a mother. She too has no great background or no morals or values on how to be the perfect mother. But there are a lot of mothers that's out there that's in a situation where they don't know where the father is and they're learning as they go. What would you tell them? Because a lot of them are saying harmful things or either putting the son down and not realizing what they're doing. Tawana?
Ooh, that's so tough because I do not know what it's like to be, um, a single mother with no support. I have a lot of support, and so I don't want to ever misrepresent or act like I know the best way to go about that. But I do think that if I was in that situation and I was having struggles with communicating with my kids and I just didn't understand what was going on, that I would probably, talk to a counselor, or I would, and I do this even now. I'm on a lot of parenting podcasts, and they actually give you really good, useful tools to deal with certain behavior. They talk about different topics. I actually type in topics that I'm having a specific issue about and try to get advice about it. But it does take a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of research. It's not something easy that just comes to me. I am fortunate enough to ask my parents for advice. I can ask, certain people in my life for advice, and we can come up with a resolution together. But if you don't have that, you have to do the research on your own. And it does take an active effort to actually figure out, what can I do? How can I connect with my kid? How can I engage with my kid? How do I get, this happening? And I know it gets frustrating, but consistency is the best way. I know that some things wasn't happening with me and my son. Initially, I was having some challenges with him in school, and I stayed consistent in what I was doing, and it literally worked and just changed for the better. And I was frustrated for months and months and months. And it just took a while because my son he doesn't like change. He doesn't adjust well to change. So it just took him a while to adjust. But when I stayed consistent, that worked. It's not that easy of a solution. I do think sometimes people need additional help and support. And that is something that you shouldn't be afraid to seek out. If learning on your own, reading books and doing your own research doesn't work. So.
Okay. Hey, Anton, the mothers out there that do not have the support, what would you tell them?
The only thing that I can think of is just to find some positive role models, some positive male role models that can play a larger role in his life. I don't know, it's going to have to be more of a village approach. You might have to, more closely align him with a coach on a specific team and get him involved in sports. He might have to be more. It could be anything. It could be taekwondo. It could be, you know, she has some really great uncles that can play a role in his life. But often at times, the difficult part is that people don't even understand what a positive role model look like, right? They think that, the little homie that's moving, doing whatever he doing, and it's the mother's brother, but he might be trash too. You know what I'm saying? So the problem is that you don't know what you don't know. And again, my thing always comes back to, well, what role and what responsibility does the father play in his life? And why is he not being the one that the overwhelming majority of the negative attention is being heaped on versus the mother, regardless of how things turned out? And I mean, of course, I'm a huge believer in personal responsibility, but I think it's unfair to not channel some of that energy towards an absentee father. So my solution would just be to try to find more positive male role models and to allow them to be around people that can help guide them in that way. And it's going to be more. It has to be more than one. It can't be one specific person that takes that on that level of responsibility.
I'm gonna answer that question. I know that I'm a father, and I just want to kind of give an example, a conversation that I just had with my son yesterday. And he goes through a lot of issues himself, and I'm the father, and I am present. So the conversation that I had with him, I told him that I'm not perfect. I understand that I may not be the best parent. And what I told him directly is that I want to strive to try to be a better father. That's what I'm working on. And sometimes you may not have the necessary skills. Sometimes you may not have learned that as you was growing up, or even, while being a parent. But what I suggest is that maybe you might need to speak with somebody. Maybe you might need to do some research, watch some YouTube videos, talk with people that have a better sense on, different methods that you can use while parenting. So if I had to suggest that, I would just suggest just seeking information, research, try speaking with somebody. You might need to get some therapy. You might need to work on anger management. There are a lot of resources out there that we could be active in so that we are better parents, mothers and fathers to our children. B. Nix, if you could give some advice to someone that doesn't have support, what would you tell them?
I don't know. I actually was, thinking about that. I knew you was going to eventually come to me, but I'm gonna take this in a little bit of a different direction. And I think one of the sayings that we go by, when you know better, you do better, right? The thing is, everybody's answer was more so catering toward a group of people that are ready to improve, right? And I think sometimes us as human beings, we already go in thinking that people are already at this level, and they're ready to just refine how to be a better parent. That young lady, she's getting there, but let's say she still needs work. She still needs to come to the realization. And, we see it when people have like an addiction, right? Or they're alcoholic, where you got to hit rock bottom, right? Sometimes somebody needs to hit rock bottom in order to realize that, wow, God or whoever your higher power is, or even if you're atheist or agnostic, that, what? I need to sit down and sit in my crap that I've created in order to now reflect on what I need. So it's kind of hard to say that, because the thing is, in our society, there are many resources out there. I say way more resources on how to just be better at everything that is at our fingertips. But at the same time, you have to be the person who actually has to want to search that YouTube video, JR, or has to want to reach out, Anton, in order to find those people, those males that I could now kind of get a different perspective of how to model behavior. We assume that people are ready to have those conversations, and they're not. So I think it's really more so about just, I think we need to do it from a more of a institutional approach. Really, we talk about parenting. Even if you're a parent or not, I think these are some things that maybe needs to be discussed, in the school setting, when we're in high school. The thing is, we may say like, oh, well, I don't need to know that. I became the best version of a father on information that I didn't know I needed. And I didn't know I needed it until now. And now reaching into my toolbox to say, hey, now I know what my brother meant when he was doing that. Now I know what my grandmother, why she said what she said when I was like 13 years old, right? The thing is, you may feel like this doesn't apply to me. We think we're above the law in many cases on how we live our lives. We think that someone else's information is not applicable to us. So the thing is, I think that we just need to ensure that we're in a space to learn. And the thing is, it's hard because we learn how to parent from other parents. And we assume that what we learned or how we were parented was fact. That's just how you're supposed to do it. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, I love Gran, but there was a lot of things I disagreed with her approach on. But she gave me perspective that prompted me to say, like, it got to be another way. It has to be another way. If that's what she's telling me, it got to be another alternative. So the thing is, I think that we just need to continue to be in the space. And I know for me, I always joke when I say, like, hey, you squad. Squad to me, it mean when, to me, like your family, like when friends become family, you squad. But the thing is like we need to continue to identify with people, going back to what Anton mentioned, the village, in order to identify how we're able to model that behavior. I may not even be a parent, but But you know who was a parent? My older brother. And the thing is, he's not a parent to me. But the thing is, being in the space, observing how he interacted with his 3 kids, years before I even thought about getting married to have kids or having kids, minus the marriage. The thing is like now I look back at what he was doing. I remember he told me this. This was like maybe about 15 years ago, right? I remember he had an issue with his middle child, right? Josh, I love you if you're listening. But the thing is, it was one of those, he said, why is it that, my oldest BJ always get to run the show or do what he wants to do or cater to the younger child, right? He said, what about the child in the middle? What he did, he made sure that everything he did was really focused toward each child and not as a cookie cutter approach. To me, I'm like, bruh, what does that have to do with me? I didn't say that to him, but at the time, it's like I could care less. And I love Jerome. But the thing is, it's like, I didn't care what he was talking about with his kids. I don't have kids. I'm not married. This doesn't apply to me, but thank you for sharing this, at the time, nonsense, right? Or wasteful information. But I made a mental note that because of that village, I was able to now reach back to say, like, hey, I got 3 kids now. Yeah, my middle child, she's that one. So the thing is, I need to make sure I get through to her early. So the thing is, I really want to say that twofold. It should be something that we should learn as we're growing up, same way we want to learn math, English, sciences, all these like life skills. We always talk about life coaching, right? But yet we always have to seek out the life coach. We got to pay. Like who's going to pay for a life coach? We're assuming people have resources and a network to find this life coach or this mentor too. Like, please mentor me. Everybody doesn't have those access to opportunities. But the thing is, we do have school. Whether people want to be there or not, you accidentally learn a lot of information in formalized school settings. Period. Here we are, you know what I mean, as adults. So the thing is, I think that's a part that parents need to be from an institutional aspect, but to provide opportunities for those that want to do more, man, just modeling behavior, social learning. We're all products of our environment, right? And the thing is, people use that terminology, make it seem like it's related to like gang or drug culture, but it's the same thing. We learn based on our environment. So we're able to be in an environment of being around not just our mother, but other mothers. I know for a fact what my father didn't do, but guess what? You know who I did learn from? Not just my grandfather, but my friends, my neighbor's father that used to take me to school. Not my father, but my friend's father, you know, or from my brother, all these different people. Hell, my 4th grade teacher, all these different things. Like, those are things I think people need to really take time to really, we always say that, JR. Folks need to, as adults, need to take time to reflect and focus on self.
Yeah.
Whether it's from a financial aspect, parenting, professional, relationship, we don't give ourselves enough space to just be alone and to think in the process who we want to be. And this goes back to that whole deception conversation. We deceive ourselves every day if we don't provide the space for ourselves to think and grow.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. We have to be better parents. We have to make sure that we pour into our kids. I appreciate that, man. A lot of valuable information in that discussion.